Committee to order, and it is 7:03. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. We appreciate it. And does anybody have any amendments to the agenda?
No.
None.
Okay. Um, I have to. And does anyone have any conflicts of interest with the topics that we'll be talking about?
No.
Nope.
Nope.
Okay. So can we get a motion to approve the agenda as it was submitted?
Motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
And I
And
will second.
awesome. Thank you, everybody. So we basically have two items on our agenda tonight, and they are important items. So several of us from the committee, Dan and Mike Culp and I went out to walk along Riverdale Drive or Riverdale Road to look at potential safety improvements. The committee has funds set aside, or the town has funds set aside, and the Walk Bike Drive Committee can make recommendations on how that funding is spent. And I don't know if the budget has changed. It was $350,000. Is that still the case?
Yes.
Nothing's
Yes.
changed. Okay. I didn't know if the budget year had rolled over. And so we can do a lot of incremental improvements with that amount of money. And as we walked along, we took note of some improvements that we thought would make it safer to walk and to bike along Riverdale Road. We've paid special attention near the Riverdale's Mansion, and because it's a public attraction, and near the elementary school. So the recommendations in general are listed on the agenda, and no. Would you like me to read through these? Or assume everybody has read through them?
Jessica, Madam Chair, if I can ask Jessica a question about your
Absolutely.
question. Jessica, would we want an approved motion where they're going to have to read through this and then make that recommendation?
That's what I would suggest, is going ahead and reading through it, and then making the motion following, just so that everyone knows what the motion entails. So we do have a new member of our committee with us tonight, so this is the first time he's hearing this.
Okay. And then we can have discussion after the motion, correct?
Perfect.
Okay. So we need someone to make a motion for these recommendations to be sent to the mayor and town council. And it reads, the Walk Bike Drive Advisory Committee recommends that the mayor and council focus funds from the Walk Bike Drive safety improvements, the Capital Improvements Project 25 PPO2 project, on improvements to Riverdale Road from Kenilworth Avenue to Lafayette Avenue. The committee recommends focusing funds on safety countermeasures and traffic calming measures along the corridor, including the sections approaching and adjacent to Riverdale Elementary School. In general, we recommend the town focus funds on intersection improvements, such as adding marked crosswalks and accessible curb ramps where they're missing, adding stop signs where they're missing, adding raised crosswalks or raised intersections to improve safety near Riverdale Elementary School, adding curb extensions to shorten pedestrian crossing distances, and traffic calming and other safety countermeasures along the corridor, such as adding multiple speed bumps per block, chicanes, or other countermeasures to slow motor vehicle speed as they approach the elementary school from either direction. For example, when you stand looking westbound from the Northeast Branch Trail crossing, when you stand looking westbound from the Northeast Branch Trail crossing Riverdale Road, it looks like a wide, straight, unobstructed street all the way to Lafayette Avenue. We'd like to recommend adding mid-block crossings and curb ramps to improve pedestrian access to Riverdale Elementary School. So that's a long recommendation, but can we get a motion on the table to approve sending this to the mayor and town council?
Hey, Melissa, just to jump in for Daniel, who missed the last couple meetings, just a little bit of context with this. We are making a general recommendation to the town council and mayor. And so this is the general recommendation, and town staff asked for some general language that we could use to share with the town. And then the town staff and the on-call engineer will look at this recommendation and come up with some more specific improvements to make using the funds we have available for this year. And so this is to make a recommendation to the town council to consider and vote on, and then work with the town staff and on-call engineer to identify specific improvements along this stretch of roadway.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, thank you.
And with that, I'll also move to make this recommendation as Melissa read it to the town council and mayor.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So is there any discussion about the general recommendations? And we'll have other opportunities as the projects progress to discuss specifics. But is there any discussion at this point? Or anything that needs additional explanation?
Daniel here. I was just curious, is this only for Riverdale Road specifically, or would it be any of the other roads at those intersections?
We talked about it being primarily focused on Riverdale Road, but it could extend to the legs of the intersections, through the crosswalks. But I think the major objective is speed management along Riverdale Road and safe and accessible crossings for pedestrians. We want to make sure that the kids have safe access to the elementary school, especially.
No, agree and understand.
Okay.
And Daniel, before you got appointed, Melissa and Mike and I shared some notes from our walk we took, and I'll re-forward those just so you have them available. And again, those were just observations and a lot of them were intersection related improvements, like missing stop signs, crosswalks, things along those lines.
Thank you.
So I guess if there's no other questions or discussions, I guess, can we have a motion to approve? Is that what we do next? Sorry.
I believe you have a motion. It's been seconded. You just have to call for the vote at that point.
Okay, thank you. So all in favor, all committee members who are in favor of this recommendation to the town or to the mayor and town council, can you raise your hand so that we have an accurate count using the team's hand raise, wherever that is?
It's under react with the heart, or at least on my screen.
No, I have lots of thumbs up here.
Melissa, that was great. Lots of thumbs up.
Not sure I did that, but
Just one quick question. Can you tell me who seconded the motion? I missed that in my notes.
Okay.
Michael.
Thank you. Perfect.
And if everybody who has their hand raised will put it down. Is there anybody who is opposed to the motion? I guess I just re-raised. Okay. Anybody opposed? Judy, is that an opposition or a legacy hand? I didn't. Oh,
She had her hand up in favor earlier, but I don't.
I
Yes.
guess hand. Okay. Thank you,
And,
Judy.
and Madam Chair, I've been,
I do.
Okay. Thank you.
I've been keeping count. All members voted in the affirmative, except for Mr. York. Mr. York did not vote.
Mr. York, would you like another opportunity to voice an opinion one way or the other? I know he sometimes has internet problems. Did we lose you?
He's on the call but muted.
Okay. You're welcome to put something in the chat if you like, Jeffrey. Okay, so we have the majority vote to approve. Jeffrey has abstained from voting. I don't know if my vote counts as chairperson or not.
It does.
So we'd like to have the motion taken to the mayor and council.
We will take care of that.
Thank you. And next on the agenda is the Natoli Place and the parking lot. So our second agenda item is Natoli Place, Lafayette Avenue redesign, and the Town Center Trail and parking lot redesign. So I'm going to hand this over to Rodney.
Yep. Good evening, everybody. It's good to see everybody again. We've been working hard since we were last together to try to come back with some concepts that address the comments that we heard from this group, from the public meeting, and from about 25 emails that we received. Brian White is on the call with us here tonight with Mead Hunt, and he helped me compile all that information. And as I said, what came out of that are some concepts that we want to show you tonight. We have 3 for the town center and 3 for the Lafayette Natoli intersection. What I'd like for you to consider this tonight is really as a sneak peek. You know, we value your input. I know a lot of you have a lot of experience in this kind of work, and we really do value your input. I'm not really asking you tonight to say, oh, I like this one or that one. You can say that if you want, but we're really not here to winnow these down to one selected option. What we really want to say is, are these the best options that we can present to the public? And are we missing anything? And whatever input you give us tonight, we will use to continue to refine these concepts. So I have a short PowerPoint that I'd like to share. So I'm going to try to do that here. Can you see that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. All right. How about
You can see it now.
that?
Yeah, I can see it.
All right, thank you. And can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
that'll help me explain some of these things. So, all right. So the get some things moved here. So just to kind of remind everybody, and Daniel, I think you're maybe new to this discussion, where we're at in this process. We started with some conceptual ideas. We collected a lot of data. We had a really good public input, as I said before. And now we're kind of at this fun part where we're like doing concept generation and alternative analysis to get us toward a recommended concept and a refined concept that the community can embrace. Then we will do an RFP to engage design consultant to do the design and the bid documents and then actual construction. So we're putting together these alternates now in an attempt to get us to that final concept for each project that we are looking for. So here are the goals that we're trying to meet, and these kind of came out of all the public input. The first, and this is near and dear to everyone on this call, is pedestrian bike safety and accessibility needs to be improved. We heard a lot about we need better clarity of expected vehicle, bike, and pedestrian movements at Natoli and Lafayette, but more so out on Queensbury. I think significantly more input on that we just need to have movements that are more expected and clear and understood by most of the drivers that go through there. We want to minimize the incentive for cut-through traffic. We want to maintain vehicle traffic in that we want people to still go there and visit the shops and visit the stores. We don't want to cut off traffic in any way like that. And then we want to use this as an opportunity to improve green space and aesthetics in the area. So just a reminder of some of the constraints that we have. I'll just go down through these bullets quickly. If we heard a lot about that we need to stretch out some of these intersections on Queensbury. And if we do that and we put an intersection on Queensbury that has a stop condition, it needs to be far enough away from the railroad that it doesn't create a situation where queues are backing into the railroad. That's obvious, but extremely important. There are utility poles in the town center that are not going to be moved. They are super expensive to do that. It would cost as much as our overall projects, and we're just making that a constraint that we're not moving them. State Highways told us that we can't do any raised curbs or any improvements like that under the 410 overpass. We're also not supposed to paint the path between the bridge pillars. So you'll see that is not an option in any of these that we're going to show you. We need to keep Maryland Avenue accessible between Queensbury and Riverdale Station. Free public parking is still desirable, but some of it can be removed. And all these options for the town center remove some of it. And we'll talk about that more in a bit. Buses need to maintain their routing. Delivery trucks need to have a place where they can do what they need to do as far as deliveries to the stores. And it's not desirable to redirect traffic from Lafayette in front of the residential homes in that area. And I'll show you what that means here in a little bit. So I'm going to show you 6 concepts. And hopefully, again, that help us to get us to our ultimate concept. I'm going to show you the first 3 for town center, and then I'm going to ask Brian who put these together to share anything that I might be missing or that he would like to emphasize. And then we'll take your feedback on those, and then we'll move to Natoli and Lafayette. So the first concept for the town center is what I think is kind of the obvious one, and that is that the trolley trail is shifted toward here. Well, let me orient everybody because these are all going to be the same. Here's Queensbury, Rhode Island, 410 overpass, Maryland Avenue. So this one, it formally aligns Maryland Avenue as close to the railroad tracks as we possibly could. Then the trolley trail is adjacent to that. It would cross here into the parking lot access, and that would be the only place the trolley trail would actually cross traffic through this area. And then it would kind of snake under the bridge, not through the pillars, but under the bridge to tie into the existing trolley trail. The parking would be a dead end situation, which is not great, but it's not the end of the world. There's a small area at Queensbury that we could construct some sort of a plaza in addition to the wide sidewalk that's there. So you about triple or quadruple the size of that area that could be used for some sort of placemaking. We lose about 30 of the 102 spaces in this scenario, and the cost of this scenario is in the order of magnitude of about $350,000. Also, there's a speed table on Maryland Avenue that would be a crossing over to the station, and that would be traffic calming for this formalized Maryland Avenue. Number 2 is pushing the trolley trail to the east, comes under the bridge, pushes it over here towards the building, then swoops over and aligns directly across from the trolley trail on Queensbury, as did the first one. Again, there's a formalized Maryland Avenue with a raised crosswalk at this location, a much larger plaza in this scenario that could be used for whatever we decide would be best fit in there. And this one actually loses the least amount of parking, 28 of the 102 spaces, and has a cost of the order of magnitude of about $550,000. This has a little bit better parking flow in that it has an in and an out one-way parking. But again, we don't lose as much parking on this scenario as the other two. And then finally, the one that probably, if we want to make the biggest statement of how we want to change this area, this one has the trolley trail coming under the bridge through the middle of the property and aligning with the trolley trail south of Queensbury. This is kind of the historic route of the trolley trail. Maryland Avenue, however, would come and make an S-turn through the parking lot and would be over in front of the businesses and exactly opposite of Rhode Island Avenue here. So you'd have this area for potential plaza and green space here and potential plaza green space over here. This would be, I think, useful for community events, and it could be programmed and could, give a lot of opportunity for those kind of things. But it does lose more parking. We lose about half the parking. About 48 spaces are left after we do something like this. This one is a cost of an order of magnitude of about $800,000. So this is the most expensive, and how we finish these plazas could really change how much the overall cost would be. The last thing I want to say before I turn it over to Brian is the S-turn in here would be accessible for what the engineering world calls a WB40 tractor trailer, which is a combination unit, a tractor and a trailer, total length of 40 feet long. What you see out on the interstates often is a WB67, which is a full-size tractor trailer. That would have trouble making this maneuver through here. But I don't know that they can make it in here from the north up in the town center area. I don't think they can make the maneuvers up there to get onto Maryland Avenue. I could be wrong. And it's also pretty tight out here to come in off of Queensbury. So I don't know that eliminating those largest tractor trailers would be an issue, but I'd like for you guys to weigh in on that. So Brian, what would you like to add before we turn it over to the committee?
A couple small things, just right on here. Obviously the parking under the bridge is very undesirable. It's kind of like you really don't want parking across bike lanes or a trail or path, either way. but it was sort of just like, okay, let's just fill a space in or something. In theory, we could probably push that park, that painted trail farther to the west, like an alternative to, such that it doesn't have such an egregious parking situation. And the other part I'd like to add is the crosswalk across the S curve. Right there. We can't really put that raised as much as we'd like to, because you end up having vehicles cross it kind of at an angle. They don't cross it dead on, right? Perpendicular. So it becomes very awkward maneuver. Of course, we could probably change the angle of that slightly, but one of the constraints is the large utility pole, kind of right to maybe like 2 o'clock, compared to that crosswalk. So
right here.
you had to steer away from that, which of course made the ideal, like, let's recreate the trolley trail as the exact original footprint. I mean, that made that kind of impossible, to make it overlay exactly. So we chose to go this route, but we could certainly have taken it further west, closer toward the businesses and the Memorial Park as an alternative to this.
I think with that, Madam Chair, if you want to solicit comments from the committee, we'd love to hear them.
Okay, I see Mike has his hand raised. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, thanks. So thanks for this, by the way. It really helps to have these proposals to try to help focus the mind. So thank you. One of the things that it's pretty, that the town, I think, in this space really values is the ability to host the farmers market. And so on the last one, probably not. I mean, there's plenty of places, I think, on the last one that you could probably identify. But on the first two, I was wondering if that was part, I mean, if that was, if y'all had given some thought to space allocation, because it's a temporary closing, right now. And what, with the footprint, considering the footprint and that stuff, if that was part of, if y'all had given that some thought.
Yes, definitely. We understand that this space has to be flexible. So here in the first scenario, it was my understanding that people don't park in here during a farmer's market. They park in other places. So in this one, this could be closed off and this could be the farmer's market, and that would be a pretty safe situation. The traffic on Maryland Avenue would be over here. In the second scenario, again, I guess these could be closed off. You'd have this space in here, and you'd also have this plaza area. Am I right in that assumption that people do not park in this area during the farmer's market?
Yeah, they block it off, those
Yeah.
parking spaces, that 2 rows of parking.
The one thing that I would just mention is obviously the vendors and their trucks and those things have to have access. So I mean that's one thing that in the current allocation of space, I think that's kind of a little bit easier for them, because they basically just take up some of the existing spaces in the center portion. They basically kind of back in and then park. But all that makes that makes sense. I think the one of the things that I've been thinking about is just the idea that the market day is, and in particular in the summertime, it is the absolute biggest traffic time of this space that exists. And so one of the things that is concerning now, but probably would be concerning under all of these scenarios, is kind of how to manage the through traffic on the trail and trying to make sure that we're looking for conflicts during that really super high volume time, because it's a I mean, it's actually hard to get onto uh, Maryland Avenue during that time. I mean, it's like there's a lot of traffic that kind of comes. So just maybe it's just something to flag. But I don't see any inherent problems with that. I just thought I would bring it up because that's, like probably one of the key, besides just parking, key uses of the space.
So by sheer luck, we actually collected our data. It turns out I thought we did it on a Wednesday, but we had done it on a Thursday in October. So we have video, 24 hours straight video collection data, taken from, I guess, the orientation of Town Center Market looking west toward Rhode Island Avenue along Queensberry. So we see that interaction basically for 24 hours straight in the video that we have.
What was the date? What was the date of the collection? Sorry to interrupt. What was the
No,
date?
it's okay. It was October. Let me see. 1 second.
Yeah, month is probably fine. If it's
It was October. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and whatever you saw probably in the summertime, I'm this is all just like complete pulling a number out of the air, but probably a 30 to 50% increase from that on like the really high market days. But anyway, I'll stop talking about the market. I appreciate y'all's work. Thank you.
I'll just say on the market quick, Jessica and I are going to meet with some of the market vendors in a few weeks to talk about these things, and the whole notion of the vendors getting access in these. That's a very good point. I'll raise that.
So is there a chance that you could maybe share these slides by email with the committee, because they're pretty small for us to see on the screen, and some people may have like a second screen where they can look at them in a larger size. That
Yeah, I can share the PDFs too of
Well,
these.
I believe the initial thought was to not have different design versions floating out there.
that's why I asked.
That was the initial thought. So I'll defer to Rodney if he wants to weigh in on that.
Well, I think if the committee understands that these are kind of a preliminary review for your eyes only, and we're getting your input, as long as you guys understand that, I think sharing them with you is acceptable. And I do agree that you'd have a much better time studying them in more detail if you could look at them closer.
I think that would be helpful if you don't mind sharing. I mean, I've been taking screenshots of them so that I can blow them up and look at them and see them all at one time. But I think that would be appreciated by the committee, and we can keep, and it's a public meeting, so anybody in the public could be sitting here taking screenshots too.
Exactly.
If you feel like you need to slap draft all over them and watermark, and then if John and Jessica if they want to circulate them under a close hold, I think the committee members will try to be very discreet with our review.
So Jessica, if you could make that happen.
Yeah, I think people are having a hard time seeing them right now during discussions.
I want to point out a couple more elements that are, for example, on this alternative. Well, I guess first of all, the raised crosswalk actually probably wouldn't go right there, because it's really awkward to have a raised crosswalk right as you turn right out of the parking lot. So there would be design change a little bit in that area, so that's a little bit more straightforward. And on the right side of the screen, just before you get to the bridge, we carved out 4 spaces just south, right there, just to kind of add a couple more spaces back. But that's obviously an element that's optional. And the entryway ingress into the parking lot from Maryland Avenue, we shrunk it down. Right now, there's a tow truck that parks there, and some other vehicles parked there because it's about 30 feet at its minimum and about 40 feet at its maximum. So we just kind of shrunk that down to a typical entry aisle width, and that actually let us get 4 more spaces as well.
With one-way circulation.
Yep.
Mhm.
And I think Dan had his hand up. I don't know if you want to.
Thanks for these. These are great. And yeah, I think you all did a great job with, I know there was a lot of different values and interests in trying to balance everything and all the trade-offs. So this is really helpful to visualize. And Brian, you might have just touched on it a little bit, but just for context, once there's kind of we get to a point where we're making a selection on one of the alternatives, are there like smaller elements that might change or we might make some recommendations around? So like I noticed alternative 1 had like a no left turn on the Rhode Island, but the other option
Right.
not.
So that's the kind of feedback I want. I don't expect any one of these as a whole to be ideal, right? But there are bits and pieces of all of them that, like a transformer, they combine and you get a nice design. So some of these might have different elements that are worth keeping, and some of them might not. So it's sort of like what elements do you want to see, or do you think are good design elements to keep, and that together all of those elements morph into the path forward, basically.
Okay.
But yes, that's
helpful
kind of
clarification. And I was just going to add, I think the one piece with that no left turn is just if the kind of dog leg or the zigzag is kept, just it does seem like there's a lot of conflicts with turning vehicles there. And so I don't know how much can be done, even if you keep kind of that zigzag, to maybe cut down on the number of conflicts and amount people have to be kind of swiveling around to keep an eye on everybody. But again, thanks for these and the opportunity to look at them.
Yeah, the no left turn is something that, I mean, and like any turn restriction, it really goes beyond what a consultant can say. You know what I mean? That's because in a grid network, you're taking that traffic and it doesn't disappear. It goes to somebody and goes in front of somebody else's yard. So it becomes more of a political decision and less of a traffic decision. It would help traffic flow in this area, because when I say flow, in this case I mean confusion, because you have that weird situation where I can turn left or go straight heading toward Route 1 without any kind of stop control, right? And everyone else on the other legs of that intersection don't know what I'm going to do. So there's definitely an element of confusion there. And being so close to the railroad, it's really the last place you want your confusion. If you want confusion, you want it farther away from the railroad. So that was kind of why we just tossed that in there as an element to consider, and it's really something that can be considered, apropos of what you do here. So,
should we show that on option? This is option 1. Should we show it on option 2 as well? Option 3 is really
option 3
but
obviates it, but I don't think we need to show it. I mean, it's like I said, it's sort of an element that is worth considering. I can't remember what street that would go onto. It would push it onto 46th Street, 45th Street.
Yeah, 46 is the next road
up here. Mm-hmm.
Not to get into the traffic engineering totally of this intersection, but the right turn from Queensbury onto Rhode Island is probably minimal to none. Yeah. So in that case, you're almost getting to the point where it would make sense to just make it a one-way, make Rhode Island a one-way coming into the town center. But because without that left turn traffic, I think there's actually there might be very little traffic going southbound on Rhode Island there. So just a thought, but again, we're broadening, the scope a bit, but just a thought.
We'll take a look at that. Any other thoughts on these three
So-
concepts?
Yeah, I have a comment on the third one. To me, the third one just really screams cut through. When we get those, I mean, I was thinking as you were going through the first two, I was thinking, is there a way we could line up the road and help move that traffic away from the railroad tracks? But then when you look at it, it really looks like a more of a cut through than when people have to go on to Queensberry and then make another turn. I don't know if anybody else gets that impression or not. But I think we need to be careful that we don't create more cut through situations.
So make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying this seems like it's a pretty desirable movement to make that,
Yes.
or vice versa, more
I
than
mean,
the other ones.
Yes. I mean, there are major benefits into lining up that intersection,
Yeah, here.
but those major benefits may also make it easier for people to just say, oh, I'm just going to go straight and cut through up to Whole Foods. Where I don't think it's intuitive for people to cut through the parking lot like in the design that there is now. And the other two designs are, I think that extra turn from Queensberry makes it less of a cut through.
Right here, like that
Yeah.
movement.
But we may gain enough safety effects from lining up the intersection that it's something to consider, and maybe we have other ways to cut back on it, cut through traffic.
Okay.
We can add more potholes to Maryland Avenue and make it less desirable.
It's not heavily used. It's not heavily used now.
Yeah, the traffic counts are low.
They're very low. Yeah.
They are. But we want them to stay that way. And we're going to have, when we have the development on either side of the road, south of Queensberry, I think there's going to be, that intersection is going to get even more traffic. But I also think with the intersection lined up, we have more options for traffic control, like four-way stop or signal. We don't want to signal downtown, but it would be, I think we could do better traffic control with the roads aligned.
Okay.
We had their hand up first. Was it Steve?
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Steve, member of the community. I like the fact in option 2 that it removes conflict points from if you're a trail user, either on foot or on bike, you can't be struck in the parking lot by a vehicle that's backing up. And there's no trail crossing in the parking lot. So I like that. It does seem to me that it emphasizes Maryland Avenue. So I wonder if it might induce more traffic down it. Whereas now it kind of seems like you're going into a dead end parking lot versus it's much more obviously a road here. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad decision, but I think it's more obviously a road. Though I like that it has less conflict points. Option 3, though, to what Melissa was saying, it does have a single conflict point, though it is a chicane, and I could see drivers being rather cautious as they move through it, since it's you know, rather necked down compared to
Right.
a wide open parking lot.
Mhm.
And I also could see the benefit of, turning the Maryland Avenue into a four-way intersection with Rhode Island Avenue. It seems a lot more intuitive. It would at least move back. You could get another car length or two of people stopping before the trail, perhaps, since the trail crossing is moved westward, up on this sheet of paper, away from the railroad tracks. So you could fit a couple more
More
cars in there
here.
while
Mhm.
while people are waiting for trail users to cross. So
Mhm.
I think that could be a benefit. Um, I mean, hey, I'm not a big parking guy, so take all the parking you want, but it seems like it could be a tough sell for a lot of the businesses in town, with the big loss of parking. But I think that there might be something there with the lining up that four-way intersection.
And we'll talk about parking here in a little bit.
Yeah, well,
That's a good
we can
point.
actually we can talk about it before we switch over to
Okay.
Natoli. Because it does make sense to talk about it here.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Okay.
You could get one more hand up.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Councilman Ifuk?
Ifiok.
Thank you.
So a couple thoughts. One, I guess my first question is, what is the experience for having the cars? So I like the intersection lined up, like the view that we have here. I am concerned about what does that do for the storefronts that are there. Right now it's pretty, it's parking, there are sidewalks. And so what that would look like in terms of the experience of, like, if all of a sudden now you walk out of Riviera Tapas and it's like a street as opposed to a parking lot, I'm sure that would be a concern for them, as well as the loss of traffic. But the aligning of the intersection to be like a four-way intersection, I agree, does make it safer. So that would be something we would probably have to think about from like a trade-off perspective. Um, the option, is it option one? When we talk about these plaza, was one of the restrictions that we couldn't do sort of like a plaza thing underneath the trail, underneath the bridge, like at the sort of the opening of the trail on the right hand side? Because I think any type of parking in that situation is probably not ideal, right? The one version that cuts across both sides of the trail, I think, has been stated, is probably the worst. But we already use it for farmers markets. Like, if we just sort of use this as an opportunity to say, we're going to take plaza-like designs that we sort of have in some of the other designs that are closer to Queensbury, to move one over there, seems like it makes sense, so that it's a known no parking flex plaza space, and not try to entertain parking would be something that I would also consider. Um, and then the other the other idea that I thought was, is there a version or that, um, similar to the last option, but instead of the S curve, that the crossing happens closer to uh, where this part would be, is like that beginning of the red trail, yeah, right around there, where we just basically do it that way. We already know Maryland Avenue doesn't have a lot of traffic, and if the crossing of the bike lane happens, is it not possible to be under the bridge? Was that one of the rules?
Right. The state will not let us basically do any building of sidewalks, curbs underneath the bridge. So we can paint, like this trail here would be a continuation of the trail, which would be paint. Then once we get on the bridge, then we can do that. But are you suggesting something more like this?
Yeah, it would.
Yeah. And the reason we didn't do that, which was initially my thought too, to do something like that, is because of this pole right here where my cursor is. It
Yep.
makes it almost impossible to get a road through there and keep that pole. It would have to be in a median or something like that. It would be pretty unusual, I think, but it's a very large pole. So that's why this got pushed down to here. Am I answering your question or
Yeah,
responding to your comment?
you are. That's terrible news. It just, I think it's a tough sell because it creates a lot of, I mean, this substantially changes the like look and feel of this place, and what, for better or for worse. With it ceases to become a parking lot by the nature of this, and so it's a tough sell. But I love the alignment of the street with Rhode Island Avenue, and is it's not possible to like if eliminating the parking on the top to like split it in some way, or where it's basically like the traffic gets divided around there, because this would be what, one-way traffic, or no, it would be two-way traffic. So
Two-way.
something where it's like it divides around the pole would be something to look into, just because I think it would allow for more more use of the space. I think it's trying to like marry a couple of different designs. So something to think about, if they're like, what would it mean, even if it means that we sort of lose parking spaces on both sides to sort of accommodate sort of going around that pole, might be a viable sort of other option, because I think you're going to get groups that like the aligned intersection on Queensberry, and then some folks who like the no choke points or conflict points, or as little as possible. And having the conflict point or the cross point be closer to sort of the start of Maryland Avenue, I would think is the better, since we know traffic isn't that high over there. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, one of the things that they came to us after we had done this was how a combination of this and alternative 2 would work to save more parking, and to kind of thread the needle of adding additional plaza space. So instead of having the S curve be where it is exactly, maybe you shift it over towards Queensberry, maybe 30 feet, 40 feet.
Like in here.
So well, yeah, maybe where the green is, where the green space is, as shown. I mean, the green space can be really anywhere. But
with the goal of saving parking back in here.
Exactly right. So shifting the bike path or the trail up toward the Memorial Park and toward the businesses, and then bringing the S curve down a little bit south toward Queensberry, just a little bit, to retain access to just at least some of that parking up there, and still have a fairly ample new plaza space between the tracks and Maryland Avenue
in here.
Yeah. Just a thought that we had, similar to Councilman.
So I think that moving that S curve closer to Queensberry, I mean, it would be nice to have enough of that plaza space and green space to accommodate the farmers market all in one spot. And it seems like you would have, I guess maybe you have a larger chunk this way on the east side of the trail. But I think if you shift it, you may end up exactly the same, just a bigger chunk on the west side. And I think that the business owners that like Manifest Bread and Riviera Tapas are going to have a strong opinion one way or the other about this. So
yeah, I agree.
So that's where our next data collection effort comes in. This month, either next week or the following week. We're going to do a parking utilization study. Basically, all 78 or 80 spaces in the town center, we're going to walk every hour from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock and write down the license plate number, and we're going to see what the turnover is. Who parks there? How long do they stay? Do they camp out all day? That kind of thing. Like what kind of it's a typical parking utilization study, but it gives you a lot of really good information in terms of how your parking lot is utilized.
Mm-hmm. Is it people going to the businesses?
It's all anonymous, right? So I don't, I'm not
commuters,
right?
Is it people storing their vehicles there because there's no fee? It would tell us that, and I think the big thing is really how much transient parking is there that's turning over quickly, which would make you think they're going to the businesses, and we want to have at least that much provided in any of these designs.
I mean, if you have 30 spaces that are literally parked with the same car all day long, that really isn't fair to you or the business owners.
Mm-hmm.
And that clearly means that there's extra space. Those spaces can go, period.
I think
go ahead. Sorry.
There are business owners need somewhere to park too. Just
Oh, that reminds me. One of our observations was that there's delivery trucks stop on Queensbury Road, just west of the intersection, heading westbound toward Route 1. Right about there, right after that crosswalk is where they stop to unload, and they crush traffic for as long as they're there, because it's such a skinny road. There's no getting around them. So whenever a delivery truck is there, there's some serious downstream effects that take a while to unfurl.
Councilman Ifiak?
Yes, that's good to know, and I think maybe that might be a selling point for having the road sort of like up against the businesses, and this realignment. The only other thing I would think of is if we know that underneath, like where the beginning of the bike trail is we're trying to eliminate that from being parking. I know we can't build something physical, but even if we paint it, I think the green space, trying to have it as closely connected to that part makes the most sense. So it's almost like you come off the trail, it's painted space underneath the overpass, and then it's like a green space or something like that. In that area, it kind of makes it clear that that part is programmable, pedestrian first area. Unless that's not the design, unless it's trying to like sort of split it up both ways but I think that's, an option to make it more, potentially if we get pushback on just like, spaces, some of it just might be like how we shift and move it. But I think having like clear, almost like intentions for every part of the section where, we come off like similar to this, where if it's, right on the underpass and closer to it is sort of green space or plaza space. And if we're going to do the alignment where in this, instead of it being straight, it somehow curves to maybe where the crosswalk is in this design, it actually curves to be alignment with the the intersection with Rhode Island Avenue. And then we can use the space below it to be the plaza instead or something like that. So it's pretty clear that the car is one way and it comes down, but then like the plaza is in the other space. So just almost switching it so that we get the alignment while we still get this, and I feel like the businesses probably would be, I'm assuming it's no different than, like Franklin's sort of further down where, they have a business that, runs literally, it's split on like seating is split on either side of the trail. I don't think that's an issue. There's an element of your like people will be right up in front of your door, and that might be sort of advantageous in terms of like bringing, foot traffic to the businesses. And so as much as possible, we get that with this version, but we may just want to, maybe there's an option where we do that S curve where the crosswalk is, so that we still get the alignment with the bike path across.
Okay, we'll work on that. We can look at that.
Jeffrey, did you have a comment?
I'm having a real problem with this chicanery kind of thing going through the parking lot. I mean, it says danger to me all over the place. I'm wondering, can we go as far to the left as Riverdale Road, and to the left of the Dorsey building, and bring down the road that way, run it along the tracks. Yeah, I don't know what the future of Maryland Avenue is, but it has to be dealt with. There's cars parked on both sides. It's littered with debris. It's unsightly. And as far as I know, the town doesn't own it. The state doesn't own it. CSX owns it, right? Is that the problem?
I think the town owns it.
Are you referring to Maryland Avenue?
I'm sorry?
Right.
Are you referring to Maryland Avenue?
Yes.
North of 410?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a town road.
I'm sorry?
It's a town road.
The town owns it?
Yes.
Well, there's the problem. I mean, why not run the traffic down Maryland Avenue? The idea that you'd run a 53-foot tractor trailer, and that doesn't include, that's just the trailer, not the cab, not the tractor part, down the middle of where the farmer's market goes is beyond me. I mean,
excuse me. I think what was presented is that I forget the initials, but a large tractor trailer cannot navigate this. It would be limited to a 40-foot long truck total length, is what's been presented.
That's right.
I'm sorry, Jeffrey, I had to mute you again. There's a lot of feedback when other people are talking, so I'm trying to mute and unmute to keep the feedback down.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time hearing too, and it could be my laptop. I don't know, but I would want to see most of the traffic pretty much hug the tracks, and keep that space open.
So like scenario 1 or 2.
And start with the other side of it with Oliver Street. I mean, not as far as Oliver, but maybe all the way down on the left, on the where the old bookstore was, and have the traffic run that way. And I don't know how that screws up the crossing, and that's the one thing I'm worried about. But we've got a hideous mess here. There's no other way to put it. And I think it's a bigger picture than this smaller area. It's everything that feeds into it is a problem. And I would want to take some of the traffic away from this spot. And the other thing is, with the looming acquisition of the National Guard Armory, should we be putting a lot of ideas and thought into a farmer's market being here when it might better be up the street? Are we spending a lot of time on this when we take that Thursday event and move it up the street? It might be safer, and it might have a better future there.
Madam Chair, can I comment on that?
I'm sorry?
I was asking the chair if I could comment on that.
Absolutely.
So in terms of 6601 Baltimore, that's really up in the air. We do not know whether or not the town will acquire that anytime soon. And from the time of acquisition, realistically, you're seven to 10 years out before there'd be any sort of move of the government offices. So I just want to, for everyone's information, you're a decade from now if it happened today, and I don't think it's going to happen in the next 3.5 years.
Thank you for that. And I know we have to
Right.
um,
But I would focus on making this spot safer than it is, and not put traffic right down the middle of it. And I would take the traffic on, like I said, and run it around. And I'm saying this now because there is no building where there soon will be a building, where there was just a building that was taken down. I would take this as an opportunity to run a road along the tracks as God intended it to be, and not in somebody's dining lap when they're eating out or living over here. I would open this up a little bit and create a, sort of a festival atmosphere. I mean, this, as hideous as it is, it has opportunity here, and Maryland Avenue comes with this. What to do with that? And I think, big picture, that has to be dealt with. It really is an eyesore for the town, I think.
Well, I guess the only thing I can comment on that is the first two options put Maryland Avenue tight to the tracks as we can get. Only the third option, as you say, pushes it over into front of the businesses. So possibly one of these first two options would be more pleasing.
And Mr. York, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're actually suggesting that south of Queensbury, that Rhode Island Avenue be realigned to be alongside the tracks, that the building that is currently going through permitting for a new building to be constructed, you would suggest that the road be realigned through where that building's going. So am I understanding that correctly? You're muted, sir.
The new smaller building that Whirlin is building, push it up against, on Rhode Island Avenue, and just divert Rhode Island Avenue, or whatever you decide to call it. But it does. The building can be attached, can be in the street. There's no reason why the street has to be there.
I would suggest to the committee that from a town's perspective, that building, the private ownership of that land, and where the trolley trail is south of Queensbury is a much larger barrier than that large utility pole that is in the list of things that cannot change. I just don't see that as a viable option for land transfers, for having the developers scrap their plans in pursuit of relocation of their building.
On the other hand, it would give them a larger area if they consolidated the small building that they've been talking about with the larger apartments on the west side of Rhode Island Avenue. I think it's probably a no-go also, but there might be it might be worth discussion with them.
Again, from the town's perspective, I believe that's outside of what we're able to afford. And I think that's a barrier that would just stop this project.
Okay. And very quickly, can we get one more comment from Councilman Ifiak? We have about 15 minutes left.
I know. But these comments will save me time when we present to the council. The only other option is, as I look more about this option, is it possible to essentially, where we already have that crosswalk with the to kind of go up, that goes into the dead end parking currently now? That what if the trail was, the bike lane was just lowered, and so therefore Maryland Avenue, the reroute goes, it's almost like the option that aligns the intersection. The cross happens maybe just at one point, and essentially the bike lane would go all the way down to like the parking at the bottom of like what's right now proposed Maryland Avenue, and then it can just course correct pretty easily to align with the trail. Bikes or walking, that's not as big of an issue. And then with the extra space was essentially the entire part where right now the bike path is, maybe gives flexibility to sort of get around that pole if it's necessary, or find parking, or even put plaza space, sort of below it or something like that. Just another thing to think about in terms of it's easy. I think personally, it's easy to move the bike lane to be accommodating because, but if we can limit it to sort of one crossing of the roadway, and knowing that for me personally, I think the alignment of the intersection is probably the biggest goal. And outside of doing that, we don't really solve a lot of the issues with this intersection if we just keep it the same way and then rework how the parking lot is. The biggest issue is the alignment and all the things that come from it. And then I think it's like solve that, and then everything else is just stylistically, how do we want to program the space to make it make sense? But outside of doing that, we're essentially just moving, we're in the same design, just slightly moving it around. And as we mentioned earlier, Maryland Avenue traffic right now is not that high. And so we know Queensbury traffic and Rhode Island Avenue, like that's where the main traffic is. And so influencing that makes the most sense. Trying to solve for Maryland Avenue makes the least amount of sense. And so if it's, that's it. I'll stop talking because I know we're late.
Okay, thank you for
Right.
that.
So I'm going to move on then to the intersection improvements.
Okay.
So I'm going to show you 3 concepts for Natoli and Lafayette. All of them have some things in common. The first is that what we heard a lot was that we wanted to get Lafayette pulled further away from the railroad tracks. So when you see these scenarios, they all do that. They pull Lafayette from the railroad tracks. We need better traffic control. It's obvious at the intersection of Natoli and Lafayette. There is a potential to make Lafayette one-way southbound on the south side of Queensbury that would really help the traffic situation. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then certainly all the options have improved pedestrian flow and crosswalks. And we also wanted to minimize any work that we were doing on the CSX property and the Veterans Memorial. So the first concept is that this movement that currently goes, okay, let me orient everyone first. Here's Queensbury. Here's Lafayette south of Queensbury, Lafayette under 410. Right now it swoops around and comes into here. So what this proposal would do is push the northbound traffic down to this point across from the market entrance, bring them up here to a stop sign, and then they could continue. southbound Lafayette would come in to a stop sign, and then they would proceed to go up to here. This is the part of Lafayette that, from a traffic standpoint, if it was made one-way southbound, would really help the traffic maneuvers in here, because one movement that is really causing some issues is the lefts coming out of here, especially the buses that would make a left out of here and then have to stop at the tracks. They essentially are blocking up the intersection while they're trying to make that maneuver. So having this one-way southbound from a traffic standpoint, again, would be beneficial. That's as much a political question, I suppose, as it is an engineering question. The second option is similar, but it's more of a blockish, or, we heard a lot of comments about making the streets more like a grid. So this creates a lot of green space, more than the first option. It makes for a tight intersection that hopefully is more intuitive to drivers. It discourages cut through, I think, in this area, and it creates only one entrance into the CSX parking lot. So essentially, it's the same maneuver. Traffic heading east would stop here, and then if they wanted to proceed, they would go up to this stop and then on. So that definitely would discourage some of the cut-through traffic. On reverse of that is Lafayette would come down, they'd stop here, and they'd stop again here. Again, you're picking up some green space. The estimated cost of this one is about $550,000-ish. This one, the estimated cost for this is about $360,000. There are a lot of sidewalks, a lot of crosswalks. Pedestrian safety is paramount in all these. And then finally, the development of a roundabout. This moves everything, again, far from the tracks. This one you'd have a three-legged intersection here, but also, again, across from the market, a stop condition in both directions on Queensberry. Traffic circles are known to be traffic calming devices. So we tried to make the circle as large as we could, with the entrance angles being as such that you have to slow down to maneuver through there. We have a raised crosswalk in this area to get over to the Veterans Memorial, new sidewalk in that area. And the one nice thing about this is it creates a large green space that's contiguous with whatever we do over here, so that Munch Park could be expanded where the road was removed and improved in that way. Again, one exit or entrance, I should say, into the CSX parking lot, and this one's about $750,000. Yeah, so I went through those quickly because I know we're short on time, but Brian, do you want to have anything you want to mention?
Yeah, I just want to say that the reason that there's slight variations in these is that, like Rodney had touched on at the beginning, was that we're pushing traffic in some of these away from Lafayette, which doesn't have any residential frontage, to Natoli Place that does. So that's sort of the negative, right? The con to this is that
more traffic in here.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And that's why these green spaces are bumped out to get more separation from these dwelling units.
Right. So we created that little space right there to just to make a physical, horizontal and vegetated buffer, really, for those residents, just to minimize their impact.
Okay.
And in all of these, I mean, there's a large component of pavement reduction. In all of these, you can see all the new green space. And
highlighted in green.
Yeah, the reason the costs are different is what really is the driver of costs is creation of new road where there isn't road already, right? It's much cheaper to just rip up a road and put in grass than it is to rip up grass and put in a road. So that's why there's differences in cost.
The other thing I wanted to add on this one is typically roundabout centers can be a
Navigable.
placemaking opportunity that if the town wanted to do something there. So what comments does everyone have?
So I see Mike's hand is up.
Yeah, thanks for this. One of the things and I'd like to take a closer look at these, but on most of the options, there's in fact, all of them, I think there's an elimination of stop control on westbound Queensbury, close to the intersection with Lafayette. So there's a little red squiggly, the stop bar looks like it's, exactly.
Being
Right.
removed, right. Yeah.
One of the only concerns I have is the kind of creation of the straight shot across the tracks. What happens on the other side of the tracks with the trail has everything to do with starting here. And so any trouble that we have with vehicles not either slowing down or not perceiving that they need to stop has, I think, a lot to do with how we prepare them as they go across the tracks. And it starts to me here. So I would almost advocate that keeping some type of stop control, even if it's at closer to the intersection with Lafayette, not where it is now, because that's for the slip lane. Up there, or some other type of like traffic calming to kind of slow people down a bit before they jump over the tracks, basically. It would help actually the cross whatever we choose to do on the other side with the trolley trail crossing, preparing people for slowing down before they get to that is, I think, pretty important. So that's my only comment. Thanks.
Thank you.
Steve, did you have a comment?
Hey, I'll try to make it quick. Love the roundabout idea. Getting rid of a leg of this intersection, I think, would do a heck of a lot towards minimizing the confusion. And I really like that we're adding another crosswalk in the top left to get to Town Center Market, where everybody crosses anyway. So I think that's a great addition. And I think that needs to be in any one of these designs because people walk there. So we need a crosswalk there. So yeah, love the roundabout. I'm sure there are improvements that can be made, but it's certainly my favorite. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments? I actually kind of like the roundabout also, and I really think that it's important to have a crosswalk on the west side of Town Center Market, like where it's shown in this picture.
Here.
Yeah.
That is where people walk.
That is where I walk. Whether
people cross there anyway.
I'm going to cross there whether you mark it or not. So, yeah. Plus, but I do think that there may need to be some additional sidewalks added to the roundabout picture, but we can talk about that another time. Daniel, did you have some comments?
Yeah, just somebody brought up the point that having a secondary stop or an additional stop on the west side of Town Center Market there in Lafayette would make sense. Something to kind of control traffic going to the train. And if you're going to have that crosswalk there for pedestrians anyway, what is the harm in putting another stop sign, even though it's only another 200 feet ahead from Natoli and Rhode Island there?
Right here.
Yeah.
There's no harm at all. I mean, you have almost every intersection in the town is always stop. So.
And then with each of these different plans, and I think it was the first one had the one way on Lafayette. Would that be true for all of these, or just that one based on the other traffic pattern?
It could be true for any of them. We just showed it on the one. I think from a traffic, I guess I'm going to repeat myself. From a traffic standpoint, this is what we're going to recommend. But I don't know exactly how this affects everyone in this block and if it's acceptable. And that's something I think we'll have to drill down on. but that would certainly clean up a lot of the maneuvers and conflict points if this was just a one-way southbound.
So we did model this as that with the northbound Lafayette traffic going away from that location and being pushed down to 48th Street, the next block to the east. I think it's 48th.
Yeah, it is.
And going, making the left there and going straight toward the tracks. Right now I think it's a one-way only in the peak hour condition, but we did model that even with a four-way stop at Natoli and Queensbury, and everything works fine. It works out really well. But again, you're diverting traffic from a non-residential street to a residential street. But from my standpoint as an engineer, it works great. It works great from a traffic standpoint.
I mean, for a lot of reasons, I agree with the principle of the idea, but going back to the first agenda we had for the evening, if you make that a left only at that point, by the time you get to Riverdale Road, then anybody that was heading north on Lafayette would have to turn down Riverdale Road, so you would create even more traffic going down that residential road towards the school, and just something to consider there as well.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, that's what would happen.
Yeah, so they get to 48th Street, and then they could pop out to Queensbury.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we have any more conversations, comments? So if we have additional comments, would you like us to send them to you after the meeting?
Sure. Either send them to Jessica or I think you have my email. You can send them directly to me if you want.
Okay.
Rodney and Brian, could you just clarify though what kind of feedback would be helpful at this stage? Because I think what I understood is this is in preparation of sharing these with the broader community. And so is there information that would be helpful between now and then, or should we just send you all of our thoughts on these?
I don't know that we need to get into a lot of details about whether the sidewalk should go here or those kind of things. I think what we're looking for is did we explore all the options that are feasible? Back on the town center, if there was some discussion about whether or not this maneuver should happen in a different location, that's a helpful comment that we can pursue that, and maybe we have an option 3A and a 3B kind of thing. So kind of a high level comments is what we're really looking for at this juncture. And do you think these are all worthy of presenting to the community and letting them weigh in on? And let me just skip down to my last slide here. Once we get your comments, we'll incorporate those into the design. Brian already mentioned we're going to collect parking data. In the next few weeks, we're going to drill down on some of the issues like buses and one-way Lafayette proposal and those different things and see what we need to do there. The next mayor and council meeting, I believe, then will be in April, and then we'll have a public presentation. And what I'm kind of envisioning is that we'll present these and then give people literal dots or something that they could go up and vote or vote with a comment and see where the community is falling in all these different options to see if one option kind of carries the day. So that's kind of where we're heading. So any of your comments that you want to incorporate into these designs now would be helpful.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful. And I think it's probably best to send comments to Jessica so that we have just with single point of contact.
That's fine. It's fine.
Okay, and with that.
And I think we need to get these out to you. We'll mark them draft and we'll get them out to you in the next short period of time.
That would be great.
And if I may add, Rodney, we just don't want the plans to be circulated outside of the committee for now. It's really important. This is a really popular and impactful project, and we want to make sure that the community has equal opportunity to provide feedback. So this committee is the committee of experts, right? You all have a specialty, and so we're looking for some viability. I'm sorry, Jeffrey. I have to mute you again. The feedback is difficult, but we just want to make sure that everyone has equal opportunity to provide feedback. So the plan is that there will be another public meeting to the mayor and council likely in April. And then in May, as Rod mentioned, we had the thought of having something on site during the farmers market and then a full community meeting probably the second week in May. So there's plenty of opportunity, but we just do not want the plans to be circulated so everyone has a chance to weigh in at the same time. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Okay, and so Jeffrey, did you have a comment? No, you. Okay. So I don't have can you switch back to the agenda? I think we're done. I don't have.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
I can. I'm just using a laptop screen, so I'm limited in my screen stuff. And so our next opportunity is for public comment. We've taken some comments as we went along. Are there any additional public comments? Okay. And with that, can I get a motion?
Can I ask a quick question? Is that correct on our next meeting in June?
Oh, we don't have anything in April and May?
Well, we do. We have the budget process and then the town election. So we're trying to push some of the dates out. I think when we initially did our schedule, we weren't planning to meet in March, April, or May. So we are proposing a date in June. There will be several community meetings in between now and then, specifically on this project.
Okay.
Yeah, Jessica, you weren't hurting my feelings. I just wanted to make sure that's correct.
Mike, you can call or email anytime, you know that.
And that's a good catch, Mike, because I'm sitting here looking at that, not even thinking about, wow, that's a long ways away. But yeah, we'll definitely be in contact with you, and hopefully our committee will be available to volunteer at the public meetings. So with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Dan. And can we get a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you very much. And with that, we are our next meeting is June 9th. And with that, we will adjourn our meeting for tonight. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and welcome, Daniel. And thank you for joining us, Steve.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Everyone take care.
Good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.